Okay. Erev Tov, everybody. We are at Chaf Shvat, the 20th of Shvat, getting closer and closer to Kabolas HaTorah this week. This week we have a Kabolas HaTorah, and we got amazing things, a number of different teachings from Rav Moshe Wolfson. He should live long and well. And let's start with something I usually don't start with, but it's fascinating. Let me just put this on the top so now it doesn't get in the way. At the end of every Torah portion, there is what we call a mnemonic, which means they tell us how many psukim are in the parsha, and then it's a gematria for something. And Rav David Feinstein, Zichrono Livracha, he told us that he would come up with what the mnemonics were. So, and you'll find it in your art school Chumash in the back at the end of the parsha. So the mnemonic for this parsha, which has 72 verses, is the word Yonadav. Yonadav. You see the word Yonadav. Yonadav. You got Yud, it keeps popping up here. What's going on here? So you got the Yud is 10, the Vav is 6, the Nun is 50, the Dal is 4, the Beis is 2, 72. What's Yonadav? It's Nadav and a Yud. Yud stands for Hashem. So Hashem granted Yisrael the title of his chosen people. Very nice. It makes sense. Parshas Yisro, Hashem gave us the Torah. It's amazing. However, there's a problem. If you will count the psukim, there's 75. There's 75. There's not 72. Count them. You will see. You just see how many, the prakim numbers. You just look at the prakim numbers. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing the math for you, but you trust me. It says there's 72 in the back, and if you count it, you'll find 75. So that's a shtickle problem. How do we resolve that issue? And so Rav Wolfson, there's a number of pieces I put at the back, and he deals with this issue. You see right over here. The Masorah, our Masorah is there's ayim-based psukim, Yonadav Simon. Upelahu, but it's a wonder. Keep a Parshas Yisro yesh ayin hey psukim. Save chashov. Go calculate 75. Trust me, it's 75. So there is an answer that is given, and let's take a look. You know, we have the Aseres Hadibros, and there's something called the Ta'am Tachton, which is the lower notes, and there's something called the Ta'am Elyon, the higher notes. I don't want to get into a long discussion of it, but basically, when you look in the Chumash, you have the trup, the cantillation notes, the way you see it here, and you have in the Aseres Hadibros 13 psukim. I numbered them 1 to 13. I couldn't get them on the Hebrew side. I don't know how to do it. But anyway, you have 13 psukim. The first of the Aseres Hadibros says 1 pasuk. Loyia, the next one has 3 psukim, 4 psukim. It comes out to a total of 13 psukim. And that's in the way you see the Chumash in the Chumash, the way it has this kind of cantillation notes. However, that's when you see it in the Chumash. But when we read the Aseres Hadibros in Shul, it's read a little bit different. It's called Ta'am Elyon, the higher notes. And you see the trup is different. And here you have art scroll. I just photocopied right out of the art scroll. It gives you the Ta'am Elyon when he reads it on the Shabbos and on Shavuos. And you'll notice something very interesting. The Ta'am Elyon, the cantillation notes are different. For example, you see, I'll just show a quick example. The first of the 10 Commandments is this pasuk. Anocha shel ens mi beis avodim. Then we start the next pasuk of the second commandment. But here, look at this. The first and second commandment are all one large pasuk. And the way it's broken up when you read it publicly, each one of the 10 commandments is its own pasuk. And really, there's 2 in 1. The first 2 is 1 pasuk. Then the third one is 1 pasuk. Then Shabbos is 1 pasuk. Honoring your father is 1 pasuk. 6, 7, 8, 9 is 1 pasuk. And the last one is 2 pasukim. It comes out to 10 pasukim.
Push 2 all together, 1.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time with the math. But if you look in the regular Chumash in the middle, the psukim are broken down like this. First commandment is 1 pasuk. The second commandment is 4 psukim. Saying Hashem's name in vain is 1 pasuk. So I don't want to go into but you get 13 psukim. Just trust me, you get 13 psukim. And over here it's 10. Oh, so we have the answer. We have the answer. When it says 72, that's with the Aseret Adibros. The Tam Elyon is 10 psukim. We get 75 because we're not looking at the Tam Elyon. When you look in the regular part of the Chumash, it has 13 psukim for the Aseret Adibros. So you have 13 psukim, you get 75. But when it's read in the congregation, it's only 10 and not 13. That subtracts 3, and that's how we get the 72. And that would seem to be a very nice thing. That seems to be the answer. But the problem is the Mogen Avraham says it's not so simple. There's a major problem. You know what the major problem is? The major problem is if we have Tam Tachton. Now with Tam Elyon, Tam Tachton, look what we had. We had commandments 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 pasuk. See that?
Yeah.
But when you do Tam Elyon, lo tirtzach, lo tinaf, lo tignov, is now there's a problem. The halacha is a pasuk cannot be less than 3 words.
Ooh.
There's no pasuk in the Torah that's less than 3 words. And if this is a pasuk lo tirtzach, that's 2 words.
Yeah.
Lo tinaf is 2 words. Lo tignov is 2 words. So you messed up 3 of them. So what do? So therefore, it's a major problem. And therefore, the Mogen Avraham says that, okay, when you read on Shavuos, the Aseret Adibros, and we all stand up in shul. Okay, now this you see, this is more designed the way the luchos are patterned. 5 on one side of the luchos, 5 on the other side. So the left side is lo tirtzach, lo tinaf, lo tignov. On the luchos, there's no law. It's not a pasuk. The luchos are not psukim. The luchos are just what they wrote on the tablets. But in a Sefer Torah, that's psukim. So therefore, the Mogen Avraham suggests that we really, when we read on Shavuos, when we reenact the 10 commandments, so we read it, the Tam Elyon, like the 10 commandments and the luchos that they got. But when we're reading it in the Chumash, it should be the 13 psukim, and suggest the Mogen Avraham that, and therefore, this week, Parshas Yisro, we should be calculating it not like this way, 2 words in a pasuk. We should be 75. So we have a bit of a problem. How do we resolve that? And there's a lot of discussion as to, exactly what we do on Yisro. So we're still a problem to answer this question, because clearly today, this Shabbos, it's not Shavuos. So we're not reenacting Maimon Har Sinai. On Shavuos, we are reenacting Mamish. We're standing and everything. Okay, we're going to stand in shul, but we can't say, oh, it was Ba'otos Man, Vav Sivan, we got the Torah. We're in the middle of Shvat. You can't say it's being reenacted. When we're looking at the Parsha in the Chumash, it's not, we're not doing the Tam Elyon. We're not doing it as it was at Sinai. So it still should be 75 psukim and not 72. You follow with me? Okay, if we have time at the end of the class, we'll give a beautiful answer if we have time for this. This is just a little math interest over here, but that's not the main focus. But when you have a good class to go with it, then it becomes a nice cherry on the top of the cake, as it were. Okay, but now let's get into much more significant issues over here. And let's go way back to the beginning, way back to the beginning. Let's start with the first pasuk. Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midyan Chosei Moshe is kol asher asa Elokim LaMoshe L'Yisrael Amo. Yisro, the Kohen of Midyan, the father-in-law of Moshe, he heard everything that God did to Moshe and the Jewish people. Ki hotzi Hashem es Yisrael miMitzrayim, that Hashem took Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. So let me ask you a very simple question. Tell me precisely what Yisro heard from the pasuk. Just nothing clever. Don't be smart. Simple. If I ask you, what did this pasuk say? What did he hear?
Hashem took out the Jews from Mitzrayim.
Well, he heard what he did. He took the Jews out of Mitzrayim. Wouldn't you say? Simple.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward what Yisro heard, which makes this Rashi exceedingly complicated. The words Vayishma Yisro. So Rashi says, Ma shmua shamaba. What did he hear? What do you mean, what did he hear? The pasuk tells us what he heard. It says what he heard. Ki hotzi Hashem es Yisrael miMitzrayim. Why does Rashi have to repeat the question? And look at the answer. He brings it from a Mechilta, Kriyas Yamsuf u'Melchamas Amalek, the splitting of the sea and the war with Amalek. That's not what it said in the pasuk. The pasuk said Hashem took Yisrael out of Egypt. So if he took the Jewish people out of Egypt, that's when they left Egypt. Bakas Bechoros. It's not Kriyas Yamsuf and Melchamas Amalek, even though it is a Mechilta, and there's rabbis who say that, but that's not what the pasuk's saying. So it's a very difficult Rashi. What's the pasuk? What's Rashi asking? What's Rashi answering? The question, there's nothing to ask. And the answer, of course, you're going to come with the wrong answer because you're not following what the pasuk says. You see the problem with this Rashi? Now, Rashi's way too clever to make such a foolish Rashi. What? Oh, you remember. You're a good remember here. So the critical word over here is this word right here. Ma shmua shama uba. That's what Rashi is. Obviously, the whole world heard about this. And guess what? The next pasuk is going to tell us that Yisro comes to join the Jews. The whole world heard it, but nobody came. Yisro came. So now Rashi is saying, so what was it that he heard that got him to come?
Because he must have heard about this earlier.
Well, and if you just say he heard that Hashem took the Jews out of Egypt, well, the whole world heard that too. Nobody came.
A long time, like earlier, much earlier.
So he says, Kriyas Yamsuf u'Melchamas Amalek. That's what got him to go. And the question is, why was this anything more than anything else? A lot of people discuss this issue, and that's what we need to discuss this week, this idea. Okay. Now, it tells us Yisro, Rashi, so that's the first thing we got to figure out on. And also, he has a lot of names, Yisro. Rashi says, source 4, he has 7 names. Ruel, Yeser, Yisro, Chov, etc., etc. So why is he called Yeser? So Rashi says, Yeser, Al Shem Sheyiter Parsha Achas Batorah, because there was an extra section added in the Torah because of him. The simple meaning is because he's going to advise Moshe to give his advice to have judges. So that's Yeser, that's extra. So he had a name Yeser for extra. Okay, let's see if we can maybe add something deeper to this. Now there's another very fundamental question. At what precise time did this event happen? So if you look at the course of events, well, we had the Jewish people in Parshas Beshalach splitting of the sea, and then a whole bunch of events with Mora and the Mon and this and that, and right at the end, Amalek attacks. And then you have Yisro right over here. So you have Amalek is the end of last week's Parsha. Yisro is the beginning of this week's Parsha. However, the Ibn Ezra and many other commentaries say, but Parshas B'Chodesh HaShlishi, really, when we go to the next chapter, this is chapter 18. Chapter 18 deals all with Yisro coming. Chapter 19 is when the Jews come on the third month of Sivan to the desert by Sinai. And chapter 20 is the Aseret Dibros. So really, Ibn Ezra says we should not have started the Parsha with Yisro, chapter 18. We should have started with chapter 19. It says on the third month when the Jews entered the desert of Sinai, because that's the real story. So what are you doing with all this stuff with Yisro? Should have been, right? And why? Because Kisham Kasav Vayisu Merafidim, because it says we left Rafidim and we came to Sinai. Okay, so the question is, what's Yisro doing between the two parashos? We will see shortly in chapter 19, it says the Jews left, Amalek attacked us in Rafidim. That was at chapter 17. Chapter 9 says the Jews left Rafidim, came to Sinai. So what are you stooping in Yisro in the middle? Now, he brings from certain commentaries, and he says that Yisro, in fact, came to the desert of Sinai before we got the Torah. Just in between Amalek and the Torah he came. But then the Ibn Ezra gives all kinds of proofs. I don't have time to get into. He says, he only came in the second year after the Mishkan was up. The Jews left in 2448 on the 15th of Nisan. They got the Torah 2448 on the 6th of or 7th of Sivan. Ibn Ezra and many others say Yisro didn't come till a year later. After the Mishkan was put up. Others say maybe by Yom Kippur. But many say, and he gives all this, I'm skipping, all this are the proofs. He says it's not in order. It's not in order. It's happened much later. This should be somewhere in Mishpatim. Next week's Parsha. Doesn't belong in this week's Parsha. So the Ibn Ezra, so why is he put in over here? So he says to counterpoint Amalek's reaction to the Jewish people leaving Egypt that attacked us, he reacted that he found favor, he wanted to become a Jew. That's how Ibn Ezra explains. Now, here's where the main question is, and again, we continue my theory that the opening pasuk often has nothing to do with the order, but now we're going to take it further. Not only the opening pasuk, the opening chapter has nothing to do with it. If you subscribe that Yisro came later, and much of the sources would seem to indicate that he did come later. Ibn Ezra brings many, many proofs to this, that he came later. Because you see, he even leaves. So the question is, so why are we putting it in the middle? Now, you're going to wonder, well, what's the difference? Well, there's a big difference, because if I would have asked you, because it always would be better if we never had a Chumash and we would just learn Torah without any Chumash. It would be so much better because you wouldn't have preconceived notions. If I would ask you, when the Torah writes about the giving of the Torah, what should be the name of that Parsha? What would you say? If I asked you, what's going to be the name of the Parsha of the giving of the Torah, which is the most important event in world history, you're not going to say it's named after a Goyish cardinal. You'd either call it Matan Torah, or I got a better name. We're going to use it somewhere else. We have a parsha called Bahar. Bahar Sinai. Call it Sinai. What are you calling it? Yisro for. Why? And especially since it's out of order. It's not even in order. If it was in order, okay, at least that's the next story. But it's not even in order. So why are we putting it in here? And the whole name changes. And obviously that means we have to have a whole different understanding of what this parsha is. You think this parsha is about giving the Torah? No. What do you mean? It says giving the Torah. Well, if it was giving the Torah, why'd they call it Yisro? You follow what's going on over here? I mean, a lot of parshas make sense. Let's say Noach is called Noach because Noach was one who saved the world from the Babylon. It's a good title. Usually the titles of the parsha has something to do with what's going on over here. Last week, Bashalach, Paro sends the Jews out. But here, what does Yisro have? So he came, he gave some advice with some judges. This is the name we're going to give to the giving of the Torah. It doesn't even strike the theme. If I would ask you, what's the theme of this parsha? What would you say? Give the Sinai revelation. Which leads us to a further question. Now, of course, the men of the Great Assembly decided exactly how we should read the 54 parshas of the Torah during the year. And what is the most difficult question that you're always discussing? Well, why are we having these parshas, Shmos? Why is Shovavim now? Shmos, let's do it like this. Let's wait for Pesach and start by Pesach Shmos, and we'll get to Yisro right before Shavuos. It's 6 weeks. And we should be reading Shavuot. We should be reading Yisro before Shavuos in the cycle of the Parshios. Now, what do we read on Shavuos? We do read from Yisro, but we don't start from here. We start from the next chapter, when it was in the 3rd month, when the Jewish people went to Sinai. So what's going on over here? That's a very fundamental question. This whole, it's okay, it's part of Shovavim and all that, and we're talking about Shovavim, but it still doesn't fit in. Let's continue. So now Yisro comes. And Moshe goes out to greet his father-in-law. He bows down to him, he kisses him, they greet each other, he brings him into the tent. And Rashi says, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. So it says, Yisro was offered great honor. Kavod Gadol niskavod Yisro. Because why? Kevin Shasa Moshe, once Moshe goes, he never goes alone. Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu would go with him. And when they would see, and who would see them and not go as well? And now everybody starts following them. So everybody went and greeted Yisro. Okay, I understand he's Moshe's father-in-law. I understand that. But he's a convert. He's not a convert yet. He's a priest. And he's Moshe's father. Why is everyone giving him so much honor? And Rashi goes on. When it says, and he bowed down, he prostrated. I don't know who bowed down to who. But when it says Ish l'reyehu, and who's called Ish is Moshe, I see that Moshe bowed down to him. And the question is, why is Yisro getting all this welcoming, such a big welcoming committee? I understand he's his father-in-law. I get it. But especially if it's a year later after the events that happened, what's the big deal? So these are some of the questions that we have to deal with over here. And let's try to answer. The first question we have to answer is the one dealing with Rashi, where what motivated Yisro to come? What motivated Yisro to come was hearing the story about Amalek and hearing about the splitting of the sea. Okay. So now we have to understand what was the issue with Yisro. We have to understand what is the dynamics happening with Yisro. So let's just read a few lines from Rav Wolfson. It's really 3 different pieces over here, but they're all amazing pieces. And he says, Yisro, he came a bit late. He came a bit late for the party. The Jewish people, they leave Egypt, and then they spend 7 weeks making tikkun midot. They're improving on their midos. They're going out from the 49 levels of impurity. the 49 levels of purity, which is a lot of work. And what happens? They did a lot to become better people. What did Yisro do? Nothing. Nothing. Jewish people get the Torah. They're living as Jews. If you're going to say he came after Yom Kippur, so he's only 5 months late. He's 4 months late. If you're saying he came when they built the Mishkan, he's almost 10 months late. And he didn't do any. Now he's coming to convert. But what did he do in terms of avoda to be able to convert? That's like we know these parshios, these 6 parshas of Shovim. They really, even the last week I broke it down to 2, but they really could break it down into 3 parts. The first 2 weeks are when the Jews are in servitude. They're enslaved. Then the next 2 weeks comes the geula, the physical geula. They're finally leaving Egypt. But then now, after all that work, then they come to the final tikkun of Yisro Mishpata, where they get the Torah. They finally reach the pinnacle. So you're ready. When you're ready by Yisro, you've done a lot of work. By Parshas Yisro, the Jewish people have gone through a lot. They went through a lot of tests. Remember we spoke about last week? They had to show a lot of emunah. Hashem was making them flex their emunah muscles. They're really being tested a lot without the water and the bitter water and this and that and all the preparations that they're making. And you know what? And what happened at Har Sinai, the vision at Har Sinai was incredible. It says people saw what normally is heard, and they heard what is normally seen. They saw a prophetic national revelation once and never to be repeated. So how is it possible for Yisro to be involved like the Jews and to be accepted like the Jews? And Yisro was very concerned about this, and he was hesitating whether he should come. And look how he brings over here. He says, Hello, lo hisper im Yisrael kilo yamem. He wasn't counting the Sphira with the Jews because he wasn't with them. He wasn't getting ready. And look at the Zohar HaKadosh says, Shemish lo siper Sphira. Someone doesn't count the Sphira. And he loses the calculations. He doesn't get the higher blessing that comes on Shavuos. In other words, every Shavuos, Hashem comes down and gives us a new gift of Torah. If you don't prepare for the 7 weeks, there's not much to get on Shavuos. Just like the original Shavuos. The Jews worked hard for 7 weeks, and they got a Kabolas Torah every year. We can work hard for 7 weeks after Pesach, get our own personal Kabolas Torah. Says this, Sarkas, you don't count Sphira, you're not going to get anything on Shavuos. The point of Shavuos is the weeks of preparation. And still, Yisro comes to receive the Torah without any preparation. Where are you coming from, buddy? We worked on ourselves. Moshe guided us. You just pop in one day and you decide that you want to be part of the Jewish people. It's unbelievable. But obviously, he was welcomed. You see, there is a way to receive the Torah without preparing. And it's interesting. Ubeshvuos inquiring Parshas Shel Yisro Kodem Matan Torah. On Shavuos, we don't read the first section of Parshas Yisro before the Torah. Ki b'Shavuos sheba mikoach hazman. Because Shavuos, when it comes in the time of the year, lo mikoach Shabbat, doesn't come in the part of the Shabbos. Tzricha achonis tahara mikodem adei Sphira. You have to have a big preparation with Sphira. So what you're saying is, this is the problem that Yisro saw. Yisro, by the time he chaps himself that I should have been there, you really missed the show. And the Jews are miles ahead of you. How are you just to come there? And Moshe himself isn't quite sure what to do. But you see, he comes and greets him very much. So what's going on over here? So let us, here it is again. He says another piece. We're already finishing with the tikkun. We've already done all the fixings up of the last 4 weeks. Now we're going to do the asay tov of receiving the Torah. So what's going on over here? So let's explain what's happening over here. At this point, Yisro said, you know what? I don't think I can make it. You see, we go back to the Parsha. It says, Vayishma Yisro. Yisro heard everything that happened to Jewish people when they left Egypt. Good. So, but what made him come? You see, he didn't come. What made him come? Kriyas Yamsuf and Muhammad Samalek. So let's see exactly what is in these two things that made him come. So let's take a look, and we'll start with Kriyas Yamsuf. The Jews left Egypt for 3 days. Then they backtrack. Paro finds out about this. Now look carefully at this pasuk now, source 9. For Amar, now remember, the Jews have left. They're out. Paro finds out that they backtrack. Now, how do you read this pasuk? For Amar Paro, leave Bnei Yisrael. Translate those words, please.
Paro said, build Israel.
Yeah, they're not there. How can he tell them?
Okay. And Paro said to Bnei Israel.
To Bnei Yisrael, Nevuchim, they're lost. I want to ask you, who is he exactly talking to? They all left Egypt.
That's right. To
So
himself.
Rashi, you remember a lot. So Rashi says, to make the puzzle,
Before.
is regarding. Paro said, legabe Bnei Yisrael. But Targum Yonasan says, no, there were some Jews there. Vayemar Paro, says Targum Yonasan, ledosan v'laviron, Bnei Yisrael, the Mishtayim Mitzrayim. Paro was speaking to two Jews, Dasan and Aviram, that did not leave Egypt. Remember, Dasan and Aviram, the two nemesis of Moshe and Aaron. They always thought that Moshe wasn't good. Even when they're leaving Egypt, they said, we ain't leaving. It's going to be death to the Jews. Don't go.
So why were they not killed in the...
Why were they killed in the plague? Very good question. The answer is they were the taskmasters who got whipped because they didn't make the Jews work so hard. So that you get something for that in God's books. And they legitimately misunderstood Moshe Rabbeinu. They meant L'Shem Shemayim. Because truthfully, if Hashem had not split the sea, they would have died. So he's talking to Dasan Avira. Okay. Now, I didn't remember to bring the Medrash. But wait a minute. Dasan Avira, but we're going to hear about Dasan. But wait. Weren't Dasan Avira in last week's Parsha, they left over a month? Yeah. They left over a month. They also want to put some mun out on Friday night.
So they crossed the sea.
Wait a minute, so what happened? So there's another medrash that tells us that after Paro, they went with Paro. They went with Paro, and they saw what happened. They didn't go into the sea, they watched. And they saw the sea split for the Jews. They saw that Paro got killed. And they said, now we got a problem. We're on the wrong side of the Yam Suf. So
Didn't they live?
put the medrash in. The medrash says, Hashem split the sea again for them. What? Hashem split the sea again for them, those no goodniks? He says, yes. Because you know what? They were wrong. But now they're choser b'tshuva. It's never too late. That's the first thing that Yisro heard. It's the first thing he heard. What's the second thing he heard? The war with Amalek. So let's take a look at the war with Amalek. We read in 3 weeks. We're going to read about it. Parshas Zachor. Zachor es asher asalacha Amalek ba'derech. Remember what Amalek did to you on the road. When you left Egypt. Asher korcha b'derech. They chanced upon you on the road. Vayizane b'chol kol ha-nechasholim. And they cut off the nechasholim. So we'll just say, wait, the stragglers at the rear. V'atoyev, etc., etc. So why say baderech twice? Baderech here, baderech here. Say it once. Who are these nechasholim? So we have three interpretations, no less. Who are these people? And wait a minute. There's another question. How in the world did Amalek attack anybody? The Jews at the Anana Yaakov, they had the protective clouds. That's why Paro wasn't able to catch them. Paro is chasing after them. He shoots catapults, they come right back. Paro wasn't able to do anything. It's a force field. Like on, on Star Trek, shields up. Shields up. You can't do anything. How does Amalek attack? You can't attack anybody.
I know.
Says the commentaries, but there are some people who are not in the clouds of glory. Who? Well, different kinds. Let's see what the Targum Onkelos says. It says, okay, so Esther's saying chasrei emunah. Let's see. So Targum Onkelos, di arach ba'orcha v'kotel ba kol dahavu misachrim bat tvach. They killed all the latecomers. There's always latecomers to many things. We can have shul. We tell people we close the doors at 8:30, and there's always someone who's coming at 8:35. Always. You're having you go to a wedding, and after the Kabolas putting, they say everybody now go to I haven't had it in a year. Everyone please go to the garden for the wedding. So there's always people schmoozing. There's always the last guy, right? So when the clouds of glory go, as it says, Al pi Hashem yachanu, Al pi Hashem yisol, they traveled and went by Hashem. So you know what? Not everybody's in a rush to follow. And there were some people at the rear that were behind. And the clouds of glory went, I got time, I'll catch up. So they weren't in the clouds of glory. That's one group. And Rashi says a similar idea. Who are the Nechashom? Chasrei koach, lacking strength, machmas chetam, because of their sins. Shanan poltan, that the clouds spit them out.
Wow.
The Yalkut Shimoni says this refers to Shevet Dan, because they had idol worshippers with them in Shevet Dan. There was a fellow by the name of Micha from Shevet Dan. He had what was called the Pesel Micha. He had his own Egyptian Getchka, his own idol with him when they crossed the sea. Targum Yonason says, based on this Yalkut, how they overtook you in the way and slew every one of those amongst you who were thinking to go aside from my world. The men of the tribe of the house of Dan, in whose hands were idols. And the clouds overcast them. And they of the house of Amalek took them and mutilated them, and they were cast up. So we see there was a number of people who weren't that good. As again, the Sifri and Dvar mentions who it is. It's Shevet Dan, and they worship the idol of Micha. Okay, so now, what do you see? Who was Amalek able to attack? Amalek is able to attack, we call them miscreants. The lowest level of the Jew. Those are the ones they can attack. They cannot attack the regular Jews. 99%, whatever you want to say, were good Jews. Who can Amalek attack? Just the ones that stay behind. I don't know about you, but if there are people who are idol worshipers, there are people who are late stragglers, and we have to go. I remember when we had different missions to Israel, and every morning we leave 8:00 in the morning because it was a big day. And there's always some people there at 7:45 on the bus, some people 7:55 to 8, some people right at 8, a minute after. And then you got these guys who it's like they just woke up, And everyone says, go, leave them behind. And it's always the challenge of the madrich Should we leave them behind and teach them a lesson or not? So you could have said, well, good riddance to bad rubbish. They worship idols. The clouds don't want him. The guy's late. He's not starting. He's a sinner, whatever. So too bad. Let them have it. We don't need them. They're a waste of our time. But what did Hashem say? Moshe, you're going to go get them, please. You're going to go and fight and risk your lives to save them. And Moshe prayed. And then this is something that now becomes an eternal mitzvah. Now, I would understand if, God forbid, Amalek would attack Moshe Rabbeinu. Ooh, that's a chutzpah. We got to remember this. But who are they attacking? They're attacking the lowest of the Jews. And yet the Torah says, Zochar Eis Asher Asolachem Amalek. You have to remember what Amalek did to the Jewish people. So therefore, what is it that Yisro really saw? Yisro saw that it's never too late, even after the tikkun. Look how just a few quotes that he says, but he brings many different sources. He says, "V'shevet dan nisatzlu v'isachru lavo leisa kabolas." Shevet dan, they were the last one. Those were the ones in the back, and they were kind of lazy. And he says, there's different opinions exactly. He says, it's not that the clouds spit them out actually. They just happened to be behind. There's one group happened to be behind. It just, not that God spit them out, they just stood outside. Now that's why he explains, Asher korcha baderech. They caught you on the road. What do you mean on the road? As you're traveling. Because when they were traveling, that's when they fell behind the clouds. Zerak b'shas hamasa hazeh shel atzlus v'refoin yadayim b'refidim, and that's the lasers of refidim, and that's what the pasuk says. Shekorcha baderech, they caught you on the road. Shal de'anasiya baderech, ira davar sheishar nechashlam esachem b'usam v'achnilchem baderech, because they were lazy to keep up with the pace that they caught them. And still, Chamasa shel HaKadosh Baruch shvuch al Amalek. Hashem's boiling angry at Amalek, and it hasn't stopped till today. And that's a Milchemes Hashem midor dor. It's a war for all generations. And that's the same thing with Kriyas Yamsuf, the exact same thing. Now, before we go further, well, okay. Now, by the time he comes now, right? Yesh makom lishol why is he coming now? So much later. Look at this. Harei gam lifnei ken kvar pirish b'avodah zarah. We already see earlier he gave up avodah zarah. Vayokal lavodas Hashem beveso. He could have served Hashem in his house. Why did he come? V'mishum mamad anivcha shalosa. And it was because of that great occasion of Sinai. Hakvarav Rasha, he missed that. However, Kivan Sheshava based Varamelu, once you hear these two things of Kriyas and Milchemes Amalek, once you hear those two stories, he saw that you shouldn't push off people who come late. Das Naviram came late, and the tribe of Dan came late. You can't say it's too late. And if the Torah is ready to give it, it's still possible that he can be given the Torah alone, fresh. Just like Hashem split the sea for Dustin and Aviram, fresh. So now he comes running. And that's why therefore there's a new parsha for this. Now, let me just embellish this a little bit more to really appreciate what is being said over here. Let's take a look way, way, way back over here. A very important Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Source 19 tells us on Shavuos where we start the laning from, and it's from chapter 19. B'chodesh HaShlishi, on the third day when the Jews went on Mitzrayim, B'yom hazeh bo midbar Sinai. They came to Sinai, clear. Are they in Midbar Sinai in this pasuk? Clear. Then it says, Vayisu Merafidim. They traveled from Rafidim, Vayavo Midbar Sinai. They came to Midbar Sinai. Wait a minute. Didn't we already say they came to Midbar Sinai?
Yep.
Why is it saying, and they left from Rafidim and they came to Midbar Sinai? If they already came to Midbar Sinai, they must have already left Rafidim, no? Vayachanu b'midbar, and they camped in the midbar. Well, of course, what else are they going to do if not camp in the midbar? What else do you do when you get to the desert? Vayichan sham Yisrael neged Hor, and the Jews camped there, right across the mountain. So you see, there's three obvious questions right over here the Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks. He said, it already says they came to Midbar Sinai. Why does that say they left Merafidim and they came to Midbar Sinai? Number two, what does it mean, Vayachanu b'midbar? They camped. What else could there be? And then what's wrong with here? Vayichan sham Yisrael. It should have said Vayachanu, and they camped, not in he camped. So because of this, Or Chaim says, what the Torah is hinting to us is that there's three prerequisites you must do before you receive the Torah. You just don't get the Torah just happenstance. He says, Ha'echad, number one, huis askrus, his gabrus, his atzlus be'esek HaTorah. You got to strengthen yourself to toil in Torah. Ki ha'atzlus hu esav ha'mafsid ha'sagasa. That laziness is what holds a person back from it. It's the weeds that don't let you achieve. Now, the Torah said they were attacked in Rafidim. What does Rafidim mean? Chazal say, it's an acronym, Rafu Yadayim min HaTorah. They were weak in Torah. They were lazy in Torah. So what does the Torah mean when it says that they, back to the pasuk here, where it says that Vayisum Rafidim, it doesn't mean geographically they left Rafidim. It means they left the laziness of Rafidim.
It's a state of the mind.
They stopped being lazy about Torah. They were mechazik themselves in learning Torah. That's number one. You want to receive the Torah? You have to be mechazik yourself. You have to strengthen yourself in what little Torah you already know, that they already learned in Mara some Torah. That was number one. Number two, hashiflus vanava, humility. Torah doesn't stick with people who are arrogant. And that's why it says, Vayachanu b'midbar, they camped in the desert, because you have to be like a desert. The desert is a symbolism of humility. That I work on their humility. And number three is what? There has to be achdut. Yud hachachamim v'ischabrus b'lev shalom v'tamim lo sheyah bad bebad. People have to be together, connected in friendship, not separated from each other. Look what the Chazal say. The Chazal say, based on the words of Yirmiyahu, people don't learn together. It's like a sword on those who are studying alone. We have to learn to go together. That's why the Torah says, Vayichan, they camped as one. So why do we start the Torah reading on Shavuos at this point? Because this is what it means to get the Torah on Shavuos. We start right at the part where we came to Sinai and we committed to do three difficult things: to work hard in Torah, to be humble, which is a difficult task, and number three, to be unified together. I mean, do all those things, so we deserve the Torah. We deserve the Torah. The Torah reading on Shavuos, and we read it with the Tam Elyon, because that's the way we got it at Sinai. And you know what? Shavuos is a holiday that comes from Itaruta Dilatato. The Shavuos gift, the Shavuos comes with an arousal from below. You got to work. If you work hard, you will get your gift of Torah. And that's between Pesach and Shavuos. That's amazing. But here's the problem. And this is what Yisro knew all of this. And therefore he understood that to be able to be a Jew needs a lot of effort, a lot of toiling. And they made all that. But Yisro, he came to it. He said, there's no way I deserve to have this. He lacked all that preparation. So Yisro, he says, you know what? But I see. Doesn't Aviram were late and God let him come in. The tribe of Dan, they were late. They got attacked. And Hashem is so angry at Amalek for that. Must be, it's never too late for me. So he goes and he's reluctant. So look what Hashem, and Moshe's not sure, should I go out to him? Should I make a big deal about him? And look what the Medrash says in verse 21. Hashem said to Moshe, I am he who commanded the world to come into existence. I am he who brings near and removes far. I am he who brought Yisro near and not thrust him afar. For this man who is coming to me is coming for a godly purpose, to become a convert. Do you also bring him near and do not cast him off? And what did he have to do? And Moshe went out from beneath the clouds of glory to greet his father-in-law. Can you imagine being in those clouds of glory was such a pleasurable thing? Moshe only wanted to be in the clouds of glory. And yet, Hashem said, you go out of the clouds of glory. Because why? Because he wants to convert, and he wants to convert even if he came late, it doesn't matter. So what's happening over here? What's happening over here is, yes, between Pesach and Shavuos, we have the job to work hard and be makabel Torah new. And you have to make all the effort that's necessary, and don't think you're going to get that by not making the efforts that you have to make. But what Hashem is saying, but even those who come late, Hashem still has a place for them. He still has a place for them. And let's just see what Rav Wolfson said on that. He says, here it is. It comes out. Oh, so let's just say this last part. It comes out. Asher Parshas zu iglei milsa, it's revealed lo shaykh ichur hashor shel Yisro. It's never possible to say for a Jew it's too late. Even if you miss the Parshas of Geula and Tikkun, as we know, Hazayrim Berina, Bedima Berina Yitzayru, the person who sows in sweat harvests in joy. And this guy wasn't sweating. But still, Adan Yichol Letake, you could still fix up, it's not too late. Now, so what happened for the Jews who last year, COVID was pretty tough in the beginning. After Pesach, it was kind of fresh. It was hard. Nobody was in shul. Nobody was in shul last Pesach. Nobody was in shul last Shavuos. There was no Kabolas HaTorah. We did not hear the Tam Elyo on Shavuot. All of us. We missed it. And you know what? I can't speak for everybody, but I don't know if our preparations were as good as they normally would have been because of all the fright, all the other things. Things took way too long to do. I got derailed from Daf Yomi on that part because I had to do so many other things. And everybody had to. Every business had to do twice, 3 times the work to get half the results. Remember, it's not that long ago. Do you remember? For safety precautions, this and that. We missed it. We mamish missed it. Just like Yisro. But what's the Torah telling us? The Torah is telling us that although normally the rule is itaruta dilatato, there has to be arousal from below. But guess what? We're going to appreciate that the Shabbos before, this Shabbos that we read Yisro, this Shabbos, look what he says, Ulachem b'Shabbos Parshas Yisro, Korim Parshas Barton Torah as Parshas Yisro. Before we read about the giving of the Torah, we're going to read all about Yisro. Shabola Kabla Torah, he's going to receive the Torah. Kishoma Kriyas Yamsuf Milchamas Amalek. He heard about Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchamas Amalek. It's not too late. It's not too late. The power of the Shabbos. This Shabbos is the power that will help us to be makabel the Torah that we weren't makabel the Torah last time. And whatever we missed, we're not going to miss it. And that's why we start beginning of Yisro. And that's why the Parshas is called Yisro. Why? Because as much as it's important to receive the Torah, but another important message is, if you missed it, it's still not too late. And that's a more important message, because that goes with the message of Parshas Zachor. And Hashem says, I want every Jew to be part of the process. And even a Jew is negligent or not negligent, and he missed his Kabolas HaTorah in June, you can still have your Kabolas HaTorah, and it'll be just as effective as if it was the Kabolas HaTorah that was in June. And that's the beauty of Parsha. And that's the deeper pshat. Yes, sir, he added a Parsha. Not just, so he added the Dayanim. Okay, that's nice. He added the Dayanim. He added the judges. But he added a whole Parsha to say, no, you could be re-accepted. You can be accepted and get your own Maimed Har Sinai on your level. So this is an incredible Shabbos coming this week. It defies logic. Now, certainly it's a lot better to prepare during Shovavim. And if you're making preparations, like we were discussing the last 4 weeks, how we prepare in Shovavim, this gets us back on track. But even those who did not prepare, this Shabbos, Hashem says, if you really want to come back, even though you've lacked a lot of the items necessary, still Hashem will give you this gift of Kabolas HaTorah for you. And with this now, we can come back to the 72 psukim and Yonadav. We said, what's going on? There's 75 psukim, right? So, well, if you read the Tam Elyon, it's 72 psukim. Says, yes, but the Magen Avraham says, well, that's only good when you're at Sinai. When you're at Sinai. So anyway, so, he gets a little, Rav Wolfson gets a little bit scholarly over here. And he says, well, what are we going to say? He says, the whole thing, he says, he's a doche gadol. This whole is a big doche gadol, how we're going to squeeze in to say that these are psukim, even though there's only 2 words, and 2 words is not a pasuk. Then he quotes the Chassam Sofer and says, most answers in Torah are a dochek. I know you like to make a big pilpul and lots of logic till we come up with an amazing answer. He says most pilpuls are false and most dochekim are true. He says, Kol makom sheish dochek tzarech bir lamer yesh dochek. You have to wear the dochek. Sher Kodesh Baruch Hu said Torah, v'yachol lashev ofnei b'li dochek. Hashem can answer without a dochek. But we have to figure it out. So now he's going to say like this, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And now he said the numbers fit in so beautiful. V'nira shenir maz, sheremez nosev yeshkan. There's another beautiful remez here. Sharaluchos imaseres edivros hayom menachim v'arim. We know in the Mishkan, the Aron was put in the Kodesh HaKadosh. Now the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 amos wide. The Aron took 2.5 amos. The problem was the whole back wall was 20 amos wide. The Torah says there was 10 amos from the wall to the Aron on one side, 10 amos from the wall to the Aron on the other side, and then the Aron was in the middle. What's the problem? You ran out of space. It's only 20 amos wide, the whole thing. And it says 10 amos from the wall to the Aron, from one side, 10 for the other. That's already 20. So what about the Aron itself? It says Aron shlo tafas makom klau. It didn't take up any space. It says Aron eina min amida. It's not to be measured. Why? Because the Aseres Adibros by Mimokum Shirish Torah, the 10 Commandments came from the source of Torah. It has everything. It came from a place before the world was created. Torah, it did not come after the world was created. Torah came before the world was created, before there was dimensions. It doesn't fit into calculations. What do you know also about the letters? The letters in the Luchos, they were etched through and through and through. You look this way, you saw a lamed, etched, space, hollow. Look down the other side of lamed. How does it work both ways? One should be backwards. More than that, The letter Samach, the way it's etched,
Yeah,
there's a block, but then there's space around it. How does it not fall? So what do you got? It's beyond, you can't figure this out. Okay, Parshas, in this Parsha, Shenimsu has the Tseres Adibros are written in this Parsha. So guess what? You have trouble with 3 psukim? I got a bigger problem. I don't have space for 2.5 amas. I don't have a place to hold the letters. That you can figure out, please? So you're going to tell me you can't figure out the 3 letters? So that's why B'davka has to be that way. Gam ha'cheshbon ha'psukim ein kol kach b'diuk. The amount of psukim doesn't work out exactly. Rak b'dochek. You got to press it in. Why? Keep a parsha zu nimtza, because in this parsha we got a lot of psukim sheyachim l'midyal cheshbon klal. They really don't fit into any calculations, and you can't figure anything out specifically. In other words, there's a lot about Torah that just defies all logic. And now, what's the upshot of all this? Well, let's look at a beautiful, beautiful Rambam. Beautiful Rambam, right at the end of the laws of Shemitah. The Rambam asks, why did the Levim not receive a portion in the inheritance of Eretz Yisrael and in the spoils of war like their brothers? Shevlah did not really get a portion. They had cities, but it wasn't their portion really. Because they were set aside to serve God and minister unto him and to instruct people at large in his just paths and righteous judgments. Therefore, they were set apart from the ways of the world. You hear? They were set aside from the ways of the world. They do not wage war like the remnant of the Jewish people, nor do they receive an inheritance, nor do they require for themselves through their physical power. They're not part of the world. Huvdalu midarchei ha'olam. They're not this worldly people. Because they're totally connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the laws of nature don't work with them. You work, you make parnas, then it doesn't go that way. Okay, so go to Shevet Levi. And now one of the most famous Rambams. He concludes. Not only does this apply to the Levites, but to any individual in the entire world whose spirit moves him. What's the Hebrew word for that? Nadvarucho. His spirit moves him. And who understands intellectually to separate himself, to stand before Hashem, to serve Hashem, to labor to know him, to walk straight as the way God created him, and to unburden himself of the yoke of the multitude of accountings, trappings, which mankind chases afterwards. Behold, and look at the wording of the Rambam. Such an individual is sanctified with the sanctity of the Holy of Holies. God will be his portion, heritage forever, etc. Why did he say holies of holies? What is he saying? He's saying that, yes, you commit yourself to Hashem's life, you'll be taken care of in a way that is beyond what nature can understand. So therefore, here we got it here. So now look how Rav Wolfson ends it after quoting the Rambam. So now you understand what's going on over here. Well, the Darkenu, based on what we're saying, Misha Nadva Rucha, the one who is a philanthropic spirit, it's hinted to in the word Yonadav. Yonadav, from the word Nidava. Niskadesh Kodesh Kadoshim. What's that? Humakama Oran, Sheina Minamida. It's the place of the ark, there's no measurement. That's what he's saying, that a Jew who commits his life to Torah, he is Kodesh Kadoshim. There's no measurement. All the yoke of calculations is off. Because when you're out of this world, you don't have to worry about calculations. So where, how am I going to make a living? Parshas Yisro, Yonadav Siman. Because Yisro shows to us that anybody can be this. Even if you were a cardinal and you missed the greatest event in history, you could still say it's not too late. And for us, it's not too late as well. And therefore, we have to really cherish this Shabbos. You sometimes have to know what to appreciate. It's another Nocha Shabbos. Nocha Shabbos. No, not everybody gets to go to shul on Shabbos. There's many people terrified to go to shul on Shabbos. As I think I said it at Shalshus. I don't remember what I said at Shalshus. I spoke so much at Shabbos. I don't remember what I said. Maybe I talked too much. I don't know. But we're dealing with Amalek. Amalek is the Gabatria Safek, doubts. He puts doubts in our minds. And we have to appreciate that we're going to be in shul. We weren't in shul the last time we read the Aseres HaDibros. It's mamish been a year since we heard the Aseres HaDibros. And we're latecomers. But Hashem promises us, if you hear the Aseres HaDibros this week, you're still not too late. And what you see more important, that's the Yonadav, the one who has a philanthropic spirit. Anybody can be part of Parshas Yisro. Everybody can be Yisro. It's not too late. And that's what I think is another important message over here, is that how we're so responsible. We're so responsible for the Jews who are outside of the clouds. And we have to think about this. Those of us who are blessed to be in shul are inside the clouds of glory. 3 times a day, we are inside the protective clouds of glory. And as much as possible, you're separated from the cell phones. You're separated from the tumah of Amalek. When you're in the shul, you're protected. But we have fellow Jews who have not stepped inside the clouds of glory for a year. And if you're not in the clouds of glory, Amalek attacks you. And what did Hashem say? Not good riddance to bad rubbish, but said we have to fight Amalek. We have to save our brothers who are outside of the clouds of glory. That's what Parshas Zohar is all about.
How?
To save them. You have to fight Amalek. Right? You follow what's going on. Amalek is casting all the doubts. You're reading on the newspapers, there's so many doubts. I don't have to go over all this. But you hear the Parshas every week. The Parshas are speaking to us. They're mamish telling us. And some people, they're out of the clouds because they're just lazy. They don't want it. It's atzlos, or they have their own avodah zarah. The medical world they follow is their own avodah zarah, and they feel it's not important to have to be in shul. So, like I said at Shalashudis, part of the battle of Amalek is to fight the false narrative that it's not safe to be in a shul. The other idea, to be makabel Torah, you have to be a chevra, you have to be a group, you have to have humility. So we should be mamish, you should be so happy that those of you who are in the shul and those of you that are listening, but at other times you're able to make it to shul, you should mamish be makar tov, takonish baruch that you're able to be in shul. And if you really want to fulfill the mitzvah of Machal Emche, Secher Amalek, you have to realize that we have to help fellow Jews. It's not too late for them. It's not too late. And if, you know what? And if it comes that they never come back to shul until it's more than 1,000% safe, not to resent them and said, now you come. There's going to be a big Yetzirah when they do come back 8 years from now. We're going to say, now you come. While we were there all our own. No. You have to run out of your clouds to help them. And if you don't, then you're not a good Jew yourself. So there's a big Yetzirah. You have to realize what your Yetzirahs are. And those of us who are in shul, it's a big Yetzirah to be Balei Gaiva. And to say, well, we don't need the other people. They didn't come, we don't need them. As a matter of fact, if more come, then I have to sign up faster. But one thing's for sure, you found out in this shul that nobody who wants to come to shul is denied going into shul. The clouds here are open to everybody. The only ones who aren't in the clouds are the ones who have chosen to not be in the clouds. And our mitzvah is to love everybody and to help them get into the clouds. Mitzvah Shem, we should all be zoichet to the most amazing Kabolas HaTorah, even though we're a little late, and try to bring others with us to be makabel the Torah as well. Amen. Go ahead, everybody. Thank you for coming and listening. Amazing.
Amazing. Bye-bye.